Good evening, Stevens Point, and welcome back to the Sports Hub. I'm Will Haroldson, and we have a lot of things to get into today, including Pointers volleyball team's successful road trip, the struggling Pointers football team, and lots of regional sports action, so don't go away. We'll be right back. After a rough stretch where the Pointers volleyball team lost 2 matches in a row, they have since gotten back to their winning ways. After last Wednesday's impressive 3-0 victory against WIAC opponent UW River Falls, the Pointers headed down to Waukesha for the Carroll Tri-Tournament. The Pointers would dispatch their first opponent, North Park University, 3-0 before taking out the hosts, Carroll College, 3-1. Now Coach Coy has her team rocking once again and prepares for Friday's big-time matchup against UW-Eau Claire. So boys, I will throw it to you guys. It's been a huge win and a big, nice little 3-0 stretch. And Ashton, you and I talked about it on 90 FM Sports Beat on how important it would be to be 8-0 in neutral sites coming out of the tournament. They're 8-0 in neutral sites. How big is that to them?
It's huge because you really think about it. That's what all the NCAA tournament games are. They are neutral site games. So it's important to establish a dominance there in the regular season so you can continue on your winning ways in the tournament, which we hopefully assume that they will reach this year. They've been doing really well. And I remember, if I'm correct, I said last week, when they went on that 2-game loss streak, all they needed to do was just, refresh it. It's a long season. And these kind of things will happen, and it looks like that's exactly what they did because they have just been on a roll recently.
So 17-4 now, one of the top teams in the WIAC. New rankings obviously come out every Tuesday, so we'll be able to see them tomorrow. We'll update that as we go. But every time you're a highly ranked team, you always are almost under more pressure to beat the teams that are lower than you. So to some extent, do you focus more on taking out the other highly ranked teams in your conference, or you just focus on just getting straight W's no matter what?
I would say just be focused on, the next game. Don't worry about, hey, we play this ranked opponent in a couple weeks. Let's try and beat them. You got to worry about the games that are in front of you. If you don't worry about it, you're going to become unranked if you lose. Obviously, if you win, you're going to keep your ranking, but you just got to focus on one game at a time. Don't worry about who's coming up, who's going to be playing you in a few weeks. Just worry about what's happening now.
And honestly, rankings, to be honest, don't really matter. You could be undefeated and #1 in the country and still lose in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So in the grand scheme of things, rankings really don't matter.
They really don't. And, it's nice to see the college be ranked, of course. However, the overall goal is to be consistent. And yeah, you're going to have a bad loss once in a while. All teams do. Not every team can go perfect. There's only a few there's only a few teams that have done that in sports. So the main goal is to keep a consistent track and to make sure that when you you're prepared for the NCAA tournament, which is extremely hard because you have to just keep winning at that point.
And now they approached the more than halfway point of the rest of the season. They're at 21 games now. 22nd going to be on Friday after they take on the Blue Golds in Berg Gym. What is the strategy towards a lengthy season like this? Because volleyball seasons, despite there being around 45, 50 total matches you'll play in the regular season, that's a pretty strenuous sport. How do you keep your players fresh and keep that winning mindset if you just play so many games? It's like baseball, 162 games in the MLB. How do you stay fresh for that?
I believe just taking a little bit of time off between games and just doing team bonding. Like I saw on their Instagram, they've been doing a little bit of team bonding and team exercises to keep them kind of focused and keep their teamwork up. But definitely with that, though, having depth on your team helps with those tough situations, with how many games you play, and having that depth can kind of relieve your starters of playing time just to keep them fresh and keep them healthy.
Yeah, without question. And it should be a really exciting game this Friday against Eau Claire. Anytime a WIAC opponent comes into town, it's going to be exciting no matter what their level of skill is. But now let's shift gears a little bit. After the Pointers football team suffered a 53-point loss to the UW River Falls Falcons, many expected an entertaining game on homecoming day. Well, to say the game at Platteville was a rough one would be an understatement, as the Pioneers took it to the Pointers, defeating them 31-3. The Pointers offense never really got into sync, and quarterback Trey Schrader was running for his life for most of the game due to constant pressure by the Pioneers defense. Now the Pointers will take on UW Stout, who despite being 3-2 are a very, very good football team. So Brody, I know, Ashton, I'll pause on you. I know you were at the game, but somebody who was watching it elsewhere or got caught up elsewhere, what was your overall views on how this game was playing? Because I know Ashton and I have talked about it a lot. We thought this was their best chance at getting a WIAC victory. And they really were never really in this game. Let's be completely honest. Platteville would go right down the field offensively, and the Pointers defense could do nothing. What went wrong?
I think it's just a matter of keeping your quarterback safe. Like you said, I mean, Trey Schrader's running for his freaking life, man. And you got to keep him safe. If you want your quarterback to keep keep playing, you got to keep him safe. Your offensive line has got to block. You got to keep him safe so he can pass. And with that, it's a far cry from how they played the first 3 weeks of the season. Now they had a couple losses starting out, but their games have been close. Now these games are not even close, so I don't know what they're going to have to do against Stout to keep them close.
And Stout, a team that has scored 70 points and 50 points this year, they're 3-2, only one game above 500, but that's a really good team. I want to focus on something that happened in our game, though, against Platteville. Quarterback Trey Schrader, as we were talking about, really just had no help from his offensive line and was running around all game. He got hit really hard. And in the second half of that game, he didn't quite look like himself. Ashton, what did you see on maybe those plays?
Yeah, from what I got from those plays from the game, the offensive line was made out of the finest Swiss cheese because it just didn't work out. There's constant holes in it. And when I saw, I didn't realize how hard Schrader got hit because I saw him get sacked for I think it was the 5th time, sadly. And when the Pointers came back on offense, someone next to me was like, hey, is that a different quarterback? And I looked, and it was number 18. And I'm like, yes, that is a different quarterback. And, it really, and like you said, when Schrader came back on the field, he just wasn't himself. And I don't know what that means for the future. I don't know if that means that Schrader's not going to play this week. But that is not good, and the offensive line needs to do something because that performance was just not good.
Yeah, Liam, Stats, and I were calling the game, and both of us were really confused that he was in the game, period. Because to me, when you get hit so hard, you're essentially taken out of the game. I thought for sure it was a concussion because he went down on the field. Obviously, no speculation on what it was. But anything that takes you out of a game, you should hesitate on whether or not you go back in. So I think that point of Stout, who's going to start at quarterback, is really important. But the Spud Bowl every year, it's this entertaining game. Last year, actually, Point only lost by 10. But it's what do they have to do to fix things? Because we talk about it every week that there's always another opportunity. But realistically, what needs to change besides that offensive line not just giving pressure every time?
I guess just stopping the offense. Like, your defense has to work just as hard as your offense in order to be able to keep yourself in the game. If your defense is just giving up run plays and pass plays for long yardage, it's not going to help you out in the long run. But we did see Larry Bowe did get his first career interception, which is, it's always good to get your first interception. But when you're already down how much, it doesn't really help your case.
You can still appreciate the fight in some of these players. I know they're down big, but what do they got to do against Stout to try to make this competitive, Ashton?
There's these such broad things that they need to do, and it's and I feel like there's just so many of them at this point that it's hard to pick one that's really the issue. As you said earlier, not counting the offense, I think the offensive line is the biggest issue. However, you have let's just say that the offensive line does protect Schrader. Their passing game hasn't been very great. It's been pretty good in some games. However, it's probably the best part of their offense, and as we saw on Saturday, it wasn't very good. And then our run game as well, maybe part in line to the offensive line not being very great. The run game was almost non-existent that entire game. They've got maybe like a high of 6 yards a gain. I think that was their highest. It was not very good. So I think, honestly, what they have to do to beat Stout is they need just a lot to go right. I think the defense needs to try and get back to their week 1 to 3 form, because they were actually okay in those. They were pretty good in those games. And the offense, they need to do something. Something just needs to happen. I don't know what it is, but just something needs to.
No turnovers, obviously.
No, yeah.
No turnovers. That's something that has to happen. They have no question will have a tall task ahead of them. Well, that'll do it for your UWSP sports updates. We're going to move on to regional sports action, as well as get into a brand new segment that we call Rank 'em. So don't tune away, because we'll be right back.
The Media Studies is a program for people who love to tell stories, whether that be in written form, visual, or audio.
Media Studies is exciting because it's always fresh, it's always new.
Media is at the center of everything we do. More and more people are asked to engage with media and use media. Our program really provides students with skills and techniques to be better prepared for that in the future.
We offer courses in media production, both video and audio, nonfiction and fiction, music production, journalism, film studies.
Media Studies is a great way to get hands-on experience in the field that you're looking to do. They teach you the basic concept behind everything, and then they tell you to go do it.
We really pride ourselves on thinking of a wide set of opportunities that we can give our students.
The student organizations are a great asset. We have SPTV, the student television organization, 90 FM, the radio, and The Pointer, our student-run newspaper.
It's a great way for students to get involved, learn skills that they need for class, and meet new people.
Some great facilities where our students can hone their skills.
There's a giant studio in the center of the comm building. I've had quite a few classes in there.
A lot of our classes are very hands-on, they're very interpersonal.
You're getting the skills that will allow you to create your future, and I think that's what makes it a truly amazing experience for students.
There's an incredible range of options for graduates. We've had students go out and become independent contractors, work for radio stations, newspapers, with TV stations.
Everyone is different, and they have their own unique style. In all the classes and all the student organizations you get involved in, you have a lot of flexibility to really create your own work and do it in a way that means something to you.
We're excited to see what students are making and what they want to make, and how we can help students get from where they are to where they want to be.
I'm in a video production class that's teaching me how to film documentaries. I'm also in a screenwriting class, and I get to learn how to write movies. So I'm doing all these different cool things, and I love it every day.
After the somewhat surprising firing of the then Wisconsin Badgers football head coach Paul Kreft, many wondered where the team's heads would be during Saturday's matchup in Evanston against the Northwestern Wildcats. Interim head coach Jim Leonard's squad didn't disappoint, pummeling Northwestern 42-7. Wisconsin will now take on the reeling Michigan State Spartans, who after a 2-0 start have now lost 4 in a row. So guys, before I get your predictions on this upcoming Saturday's game, I want to get your perspective on what happened this past weekend. It was a dominating win. Great to get back to 500, but let's take into account who they played. What were your perspectives?
Yeah, I'll go first. I just think I think Northwestern, this was probably the best time that if they were going to fire Paul Kreft, this was probably the best time they were going to do it, because you know that you have an opponent like Northwestern coming up who is not very good, and you can use that as a bit of a refresh week, a bit of a time to get used to the new head coaching style, because every head coach kind of brings their own style into how they coach. And I think, it just worked well. Everything was just going great. Graham Mertz, he has one of those games where he just does really well. I think he threw for like 3 touchdowns, probably more.
Say it more like 5.
How many? Was it 5?
Looking at the stats right now, he went 20 for 29, 299 yards, 5 touchdowns.
He just does that sometimes.
Not to mention Braylon Allen had a touchdown pass as well. But it's interesting to see because so much happened with Paul Kreft, so many division titles, so many pretty relatively big-time wins and big bowl appearances. But the mojo this team had in that win seems a little different with Leonard at the helm. What did you see?
I definitely see that Jim Leonard is kind of the future for the Badgers for now. We did just find out today that Matt Rule was fired from his Panthers job, so he's kind of floating around, maybe getting a job somewhere. But right now, Jim Leonard looks like a great head coach. Granted, yes, they did play Northwestern, who's not the greatest team ever, but, already starting out, it's looking pretty good for Jim Leonard.
So Michigan State upcoming this Saturday. That's going to be, I believe, at 3 o'clock Eastern time. That's going to be on Fox. But the Badgers are actually going to be taking on a former Badger. Jalen Berger is now a Michigan State Spartan. What do you think of this matchup? And I want to get your predictions, both of you. I'll start with you, Ashton.
Okay, so these are 2 teams that are in desperate need of a win right now. I think more so the Badgers because I feel like they have a lot more aspirations. They have the ability to have more aspirations because you're Michigan State, you're in the Big Ten East, and you have multiple teams from the Big Ten East which are ranked top 25, and you are 2-4, which is not very good. So you can already push Big Ten East, team winner out of the corner because you're 2-4. So I feel like and it's a lot different with the Big Ten West. The 2 sides have different vibes because, they did this. They kind of did this last year too, where they started 3-3, and then they just won out, and then were able to play Minnesota to try and win the Big Ten West. Lost, of course, so that was an L. But I feel like this is a lot more important for Wisconsin to try and set a vibe and to try and keep on track to possibly win the Big Ten West.
I definitely think the Badgers will win this.
Also, I agree.
Yeah, the Badgers shouldn't really lose to Michigan State. Obviously, Michigan State, they had their glory years, and then this year's not going so well for them. But with that, the Badgers are looking pretty hot right now, especially coming off a 42-7 win against Northwestern.
And their schedule the rest of the year favors them to, if they get things figured out, potentially go on a run like they did last year. One thing I will note, Ches Malusi broke an arm and will most likely be out of the rest of the season. So that really hurts, and that will probably push up Isaac Guerrero into that second running back position. If I had to tell you what a score would be, I would probably think it's going to be around the 17-10 range. This is going to be a low-scoring game because neither of these offenses really score a lot of points. Now, we did just score 42 points against Northwestern, but Northwestern isn't the greatest team. And I could see this will be the game where Jim Leonard just defensively is just like, let's just shut these guys down. And to me, this is a 17-10 kind of game. I don't know about what you guys think. What do you guys think?
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just some hopium right now, or maybe it's just me being a little optimistic. But I think the offense is actually going to do really well this game. There's just something about it right now. Maybe Graham Mertz could have one of those games again. Maybe it's the new vibe that Jim Leonard will throw onto the team. But I like the score of 10 for Michigan State. I like that. However, I'm gonna go a lot more. I'm gonna say 31-10.
Okay.
I'm usually not great at predicting scores, so I tend to shy away from predicting them. But I believe that Wisconsin's offense is gonna try to stay consistent, maybe run the ball a lot with Allen and Guerrero, and maybe sky the ball with Graham Mertz, who's been pretty well this year. But you have a point there that they're going to hold Michigan State to probably 10, but I'll give it a little bit more. I'll raise it to 17, just to favor them a little bit, but Badgers are probably going to score, we'll give it 31 like Ashton said.
31-17. All right. Well, that's our predictions. You heard it here. So if one of us is right, make sure you let us know in the comments for that. The Green Bay Packers suffered a heartbreaking loss to the hands of the New York Giants early Sunday morning in London after the defense completely collapsed. After getting off to a red-hot 17-3 start, the Packers took their foot off the gas and let alone Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley to come back and eventually win the game. So, guys, nothing else can really be said about the Packers other than the fact that they gave the Giants the game. What did you see? Because this defense has played really well at times, but now they're kind of having me a little worried.
I would definitely say it's the run defense. You know, the Giants kind of have nobody besides Saquon Barkley this year. Like, their wide receiver core is, almost gone completely due to injuries. And Saquon's just running out of his mind this year. But, you know, what I noticed about the defense this year, it was the Bears game. David Montgomery was running pretty much all over him, and it was looking pretty rough for the run defense. But when you go against a guy like Saquon Barkley, it's not going to help your case.
No, and the offense for the Packers made some questionable decisions. Aaron Rodgers seemingly couldn't hit a lot of deep passes, although he had a few nice ones to Randall Cobb. But they just didn't run the football. And especially on 4th and 2, you're in the opponent's red zone. You have A.J. Dillon, who almost nobody in the NFL wants to try to tackle, or Aaron Jones, who's a really aggressive runner. Why in the world do you throw down there?
I was about to say, many people like to bash on the defense for giving them a win, which, fair, they did. However, I think I'm pointing a lot more towards those questionable offensive decisions, much like how they're just not running the ball with the tools that they have. As you said, they have A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, two really good running backs. The Packers are super fortunate to have both of them. And Aaron Jones right now, I think, has the most yards per carry in the league right now. And he is like 19th in total carries per game. So I don't get why you're not abusing the fact that you have that incredibly good running back who can get you those yards on those clutch situations, like that 4th down and 2, when you're in the red zone. I just don't understand what they're. I get that you have Aaron Rodgers, who's a for sure Hall of Fame quarterback. But at the same time, you can't constantly rely on him. And then with your wide receiving core of Allen Lazard, who is good, but has just never been wide receiver number 1. Randall Cobb, who can be pretty good. He had a really good catch and run in the first quarter. And Romeo Doubs, who has been good, who's been really solid recently, but he's still a rookie, so he still has that a little bit of inexperience to him. I don't understand why you're not going towards those veteran running back options who can get you runs or who can get you yards.
If anything, also you could play them both at the same time, have A.J. Dillon line up as a fullback and plow the way for Aaron Jones.
Why not?
To me, that was a really interesting call. And there's something in the NFL that needs to be changed that I want to kind of address it. The roughing the passer call needs to change. If you watch that Atlanta Falcons and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, that was potentially one of the worst calls I've ever seen in football.
I definitely agree with that. I was watching it live just after a long day of watching football, and I saw that hit, and I'm like, wow, the Falcons are actually going to keep themselves in this. All of a sudden, a penalty comes out. I'm like, where's the penalty? All of a sudden, they call roughing the passer. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've never seen a worse call than that. What's a guy supposed to do? You're just supposed to come up to him and just take a pillow, put him down, and, yeah.
I think that's an incredibly great point because if you watch the tackle, Grady Jarrett tackled Brady. Nothing about that was malicious. He's making a football play, gets the quarterback down, and it almost makes it seem like it's a ref judgment play. Like, it baffles my mind that flag came out of his pocket because and it's not because of we're looking at this as, we hate Tom Brady. If this was Aaron Rodgers, I would say that that's not a roughing the passer play. It was just a terrible play call.
I'll say it's not even that. It's just like if it's any quarterback and you call that, that's just a really awful call. And there's two things I want to make clear. One, shades of Clay Matthews. Remember 2018? He got a lot of those calls. Probably not as bad as this one, but they were both pretty bad back in 2018. Second thing, you got to realize that Tom Brady chose to come back when he was, how old is Tom Brady? 43, 44? 45. He chose to come back. The refs shouldn't have to protect him just because he's 45 years old. He decided to come back as a quarterback, so you got to treat him as any other quarterback in the league. I don't care if he's Tom Brady. I don't care if it was Jalen Hurts. I don't care if it was Aaron Rodgers. If you call that penalty, that roughing the passer penalty, that is just an awful penalty that ruins the state of the game. And the fact that Atlanta could have had a massive win that could have helped their franchise so much, because the Falcons are just known for being not good. Well, they have been good recently, but they're known for choking, and that has led them to be not very good in recent years. So this win could have helped them so much, but because of that one call, that could have derailed so much for that franchise.
And I will add to this, it was a third down play, would have been fourth down, and the Buccaneers would have punted it to the team that, should they score a touchdown, would have had the lead. Instead, it gave them the first down, and they ended up closing out the game after that. That's how big of an impact play that is. And I think the NFL needs to do a legitimate study into it, because that was horrific. Now for our final segment, we are going to try something a little different. What we're going to do in this new segment, and we're going to call it Rank 'em. So what we're going to do is we're going to list the top 3 things that stuck out to us over the past week in the sports world. I will start, I'll hand it off to Ashton, and then Brody will let you go. To me, the top 3 things that happened in this was, I'll go with number 3 in college football. Texas beat Oklahoma 49-0. And to me, if Quentin Ewers is still in the game against Alabama, they beat Alabama, and they probably don't have a loss in their top 3 team in the country. Number 2 was the Giants beating the Packers. That really surprised me. I didn't think that was going to happen, and so I would say that's the second most chaotic thing. And then number 1, the MLB playoffs right now have just been absolutely nothing like I thought. Toronto and Seattle, that one was not really even competitive. Philadelphia swept St. Louis. The Mets lost in the wild card round. It has just been chaotic, and it's been a crazy week of sports. And now, Ashton, I'll toss it off to you for your top 3 things.
All right. Let's see. So for number 3, I'll probably go with college football. I'll go with Kansas losing, and I think that's really significant because Kansas, first time we talked about this on 90 FM. We talked about they finally got ranked. They're undefeated. They have such a good football program. They're finally ranked, and now you just come into the week and you take an L, which, to be fair, I think it was against TCU. So, again, fair loss. TCU's a really good team, but, I just think that was really significant. And I'm personally really happy they're still in the rankings. I thought that loss really didn't hurt them, and it was, I think, a pretty close loss, too. So, that was number 3. I think number 2, also take the Giants beating the Packers. That was just really, really surprising and really unfortunate for the Packers, but hey, good for the Giants. They're 4-1, so hey, let's see what happens. And then number 1, I'll narrow it down because I also think MLB was always my number 1, but I'm going to narrow it down. I'm going to say give it to San Diego beating New York in Game 3 on Sunday, where they one-hit the Mets, which is the first time that and let's talk about Joe Musgrove real quick, the first time an MLB pitcher has ever pitched a 7+ inning game with 1 hit in a winner go home game, and that was the first time that they have ever one-hit a team, and especially it's the Mets too, which won over 100 games this year. So I think that's probably the most significant thing that's happened this week.
I definitely think my top 3, starting at 3, Cooper Rush, starting 5-0 as a quarterback, which is pretty impressive for a guy that he almost got cut this season, before the season, and he's really stepped up in the absence of Dak Prescott being hurt. I would say he's almost better than Dak Prescott, but I'm not going to go that far. But my number 2, I guess I'll have to stick with MLB playoffs for my 1 and 2. The Phillies beating the Cardinals pretty soundly. With that, the Cardinals coming into Game 1 in the 9th inning, up 2-0. They're 93-0 in playoffs when they're up 2-0 into the 9th inning. Now they're 93-1 due to giving up 5 runs to the Phillies. Now, granted, I'm not a big fan of the Phillies. I'm not a big fan of the Cardinals. So realistically, I didn't. It didn't matter who won the series, but it's a huge step up for the Phillies, who almost didn't make the playoffs this year. So good on them to come back and win the series. And my number one has to go to the Mets losing to the Padres. I would like to bash the Mets here because for how much talking they've been doing the entire season, they had the worst week and a half of any team realistically this year. You're up how many games over the Braves in the NL East race, and they just completely blew that. All right, you had a 101-win season. Good. You had great pitching, great hitting. Edwin Diaz, I mean, the trumpet's blaring, man. But you lay a goose egg in Game 3 of an elimination game that you got to win to keep your playoff hopes alive. And it's really not a good look by Mets fans, but hey, I'm rejoicing over here, so I'm not going to complain. So I would say that's my top 3 for this week.
Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Sports Hub here on SPTV. If you enjoyed what you saw, make sure you check out our other videos as well as the content that we have upcoming. For my partners, Brody Kupsky and Ashton Parker, I am Will Haroldson. I want to thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.